From the beginning, humanity has yearned to understand itself and its relationship with its Creator. In the days of Moses, the Creator was known as the God of our forefathers, or the God of Abraham, but there was no real name for the divine creative presence. Then one day, Moses, who was just a poor shepherd, came upon a burning bush, and yet the fire did not consume the bush. A voice spoke to him, saying that he must go unto the Pharaoh Ramses and demand the release of the Israelite slaves. When Moses asked who he should say sent him, God said, "I am that I am." For the first time in history, God had a name. Armed with the power of God's name, I am that I am, Moses produced some of the greatest miracles of the Bible. Religious authorities, recognizing the name's awesome power, declared that uttering it was the highest blasphemy. And so its strength was unrealized, misinterpreted, and misunderstood. Moses never reached the Promised Land, nor did the code that could unlock the awesome power of God's name and set all of humanity free.
A code that could set humanity free. It may seem impossible, but Moses learned something from God that day that changed the world. In fact, we still talk about the miracles he produced. When God gave Moses the name, I am that I am, there was a simple code that went with it that unlocked the true power and meaning of the words. But then the name of God was banned, and uttering it was sometimes even punishable with death. And so the code was lost. A code is a system of letters, numbers, or symbols that communicates information when converted into normal language. If the Moses Code could unlock the power of God's name today, is it possible that we would have the power to create miracles just like Moses did 3,500 years ago? For the first time, world-renowned scholars, psychologists, and philosophers will reveal the Moses Code and how you can harness its energy to change your life. Today we have the power to destroy the world many times over, but the Moses Code unleashes a new kind of power, one that creates worlds and helps us fulfill our individual and collective destiny. Incredibly, the Moses Code is far simpler than you may have imagined. Most of us were taught that the name given to Moses was, I am that I am. That doesn't make sense without the code. In reality, the name was much simpler. The Moses Code is a common symbol, something that we see and experience every day. The Moses Code is a comma.
The Moses Code is a comma?
A comma.
I don't think so.
I am that I am with a comma.
We're not saying that the Moses Code is a comma. We're saying the Moses Code needs a comma.
I am that,
Comma.
I am.
The very name of God, I am that I am, has intrigued me for many, many years. When I was a child, I was told this by the adults around me. I am that I am, saith the Lord. And I thought, what in the world does that mean? I am that I am. Then one day a spiritual teacher said to me, I want you to change your life in 24 hours. I want you to walk down the street for 60 minutes today, and I want you to look at everything you see, and I want you to identify personally with that, whatever it is, the grass, the flowers, other people, the wino, the rich person driving by, the chauffeur-driven Cadillac, whatever it is. Just look at it and say, I am that. And so I did that. I walked down the street. I was with a friend. And I was saying in my mind, I am that, I am that, I am that. Whatever I looked at. If I saw violence on a TV screen, I am that. If I saw something beautiful happening in the park between a mother and a daughter, I am that. I was just saying that to myself and allowing myself to identify with all that is. And the friend that I was with looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just saying I am that." She said to me, "No, you're not that. You're not that, you're you." I said, "No, I am that. You don't understand, I really am that." She says, No, you're you. You're really mixed up in your head." I said, "Listen to me, I am that, I am." And then I said, "Oh my God, did you hear what I just said? I just said, I am that. I am. The great name of God, I am that I am, has been misunderstood from the beginning of time. It's simply God's simple way, God's very human way of saying an enormous truth. I am that. I am."
This is the presence of God saying, "I am that." Everywhere you see me. People used to say God is in everything. Really, everything is in God.
God isn't just saying that I created that.
God is this field, this presence that is everywhere in its fullness.
God is saying, I am that.
I am that.
I am that person.
I am that.
I am that experience.
I am that.
I am every that there is.
Many of us are still stuck at kind of a fifth grade idea of God. And so we have, I am that I am is this man in the sky with a white flowing beard and these big long flowing robes.
God made us in its image, and we've been trying to return the favor ever since, meaning that we've made God in a man's image.
And this I am that I am is out there, ready to decide capriciously whether to bless us or punish us for certain things.
Now, of course, God can't be jealous because God's the only game in town. God is infinite, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, so there's nothing for God to be jealous of. So that was a primitive mindset, projecting human emotions onto forces they didn't understand.
And we project that presence outward instead of having a relationship with that presence inwardly.
If God actually is each one of us, then that would mean that each one of us is an embodiment of God. If that's true, then what would the possibilities be? What could we create?
So we're walking to the wall now, where we're going to join thousands of other people encircling the entire old city of Jerusalem.
But before we go there, we're going to explore 3 keys for unlocking the experience of being an embodiment of God, actually feeling in our bodies. And we're going to use 3 letters to do that, G-O-D, to help make it easier for us to remember. When these keys are applied to our lives, then we'll be able to turn that simple comma into one of the most transformative tools in history. The first key for experiencing ourselves as an embodiment of God is giving. We've all heard that it's better to give than to receive, but is that really true? And how can we give if we don't have enough ourselves? Mystics and saints like St. Francis said that it is in giving that we receive. Is that just a nice spiritual slogan? Well, it really only comes down to one idea that's pretty far out.
That which we give to others, that which we give to the world, we give to ourselves. So whatever one wants to experience in one's own life, one chooses to give away. Now, of course, the thought is, how can I give it away if I don't have it? Because the reason I'm trying to draw it to me is because I don't have it. But the very giving it to another is what causes you to realize you've had it all along.
There's a part of your brain called the limbic brain that is not time-oriented and it's not object-oriented, meaning it can't tell the difference between itself and others, and it has no sense of past, present, future. That timeless and objectless place in my brain receives what I'm giving because it doesn't know whether it's going out or whether it's coming in.
Whatever it is that we are creating for someone else, our bodies experience it first. So when we offer the prayers or the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of peace for our loved ones halfway around the world or between nations, we are experiencing that peace and that healing as well. And in this way, once again, we see the example that giving truly is receiving.
So, if you criticize other people, your brain doesn't know you're criticizing them. It receives it as if it was self-directed. If you care for and give to another person, that part of the brain doesn't know which way it's going, so it always receives. The brain always receives as a gift to itself what is given to another person.
We don't even have physical contact anymore. We don't look at each other because of technology. We barely see each other face to face. So we're missing that connection also. Make that connection. Give back to someone. Let that person cut in line. Let that person in traffic. And I'm telling you, it just keeps, it'll flow, and you'll feel better for it.
That there's a dimension about who we are, that as a result of giving, that's the only way we make that connection. That's why my favorite book says, the greatest among you will be your servant. A servant is a giver.
I think service is misunderstood in our culture because we confuse service with servitude or servant, which to the ego is offensive, it's demeaning, it's like but there is a saying, and I always have used it, to serve is to rule. To be able to be of genuine service really allows you to feel that your energy and your efforts make a difference.
September 2001, I was in New York. I awoke to the news, and my friend that I was staying with, Doug, we went to the roof of his apartment building and watched the World Trade Center crumble. And both of us simultaneously looked at each other and said, we have to go down there right now. We were literally running against the current of people that were rushing out of the scene. We were running into the scene. Doug works in the media, so he had media badges that allowed us to get beyond barricades that were just being set up by local police. There was still no support system for these firefighters and these rescue workers. So it became a real necessity that we find food and water really fast. So we actually, with the support of a couple of NYPD police officers, we started looting all the nearby delis and supermarkets. And we had turkey meats, and we had the finest of New York delis meats and everything. After a while, it became clear that there was just one food that all the rescue workers wanted, and that was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I later realized that it was because it was comfort food. And it was the first area where they actually did the first roll call. Fire chief stood up on top of one of the crushed fire trucks. There were probably 400 names that he called off, and at least half of them were not present. As the reality set in with all of the firefighters around, that they were not present because they were not alive. They were in the building. They started to literally crumble like dominoes all around us. They fell to their knees, they sat on curbs, and these big hardened men were just in tears. The earth movers came in to clear the way for all of the rescue vehicles, and Wall Street was lined with fine automobiles, so the only way to move them was to literally push them over with these earth movers. They just flipped the cars one at a time, all the way down the road, flipping cars out of the way. And I watched these material items go from being this beautiful car that I was drilling over to just being trash in seconds. We watched and we just stood there, you know, like 12 guys going, oh my God, how can they do that? But then it became really clear to me that it's like, that was so irrelevant to the task of finding people alive that all of the material world was just garbage at that point. It didn't matter. I had suited up, you know, rescue workers' uniform, basically, with the respirator and everything on. And this actually ended up becoming my pass to get into the ground zero, where it was nothing but qualified rescue workers. And here I was, just a civilian with really no qualification to be there. So the first victim that was found was this little man in a suit, and he had been completely crushed and disfigured under a fire truck. And I stood there looking at him and imagining what his story must have been, that he likely hid under the thing that felt the most secure, like a fire truck. Do you know what I mean? He probably crawled under that fire truck as debris was falling, only to be crushed under that fire truck when that entire rig was crushed upon him. And so that was really the first sobering moment of, wow, okay, this is what we're here for, and this is what we're going to witness, and am I up for it? And you know, I didn't really even have to think about it. It was just a yes.
We have to understand that when we perform service for others, we're not really doing that. I mean, it looks like in the illusion that we're doing that we are serving others, but the truth is there's no one else to serve but the self. There's nothing going on in the world except self-service.
The more you give, the more you receive. But the desire to give is not strictly for getting in return. You know, there's not this intellectual thought of, okay, well, I'm going to give to you, you, and you, because if I do, then maybe I'll get something. Most of us operate in that mode already.
Moses didn't do that. He just gave and received and served.
We want to give as God gives, without expectations, without wanting anything in return, just to connect with another person, to serve in the grandest way.
Greatness is your capacity and your willingness to be of service. Service to what? Service to love, service to peace, service to beauty, service to God, service to joy.
I think that when we do that, when we take our attention off all of our problems and all of our circumstances, and we put it on somebody else, it's the thought of doing that that allows us to lose track of ourselves and lose track of our problems, and that's an act of creation.
Recently, I was inspired by my own son, Bo, who was having a bar mitzvah, and the rabbi explained to him that the mitzvah was really in the stretch, going beyond what he felt comfortable doing.
What kind of challenges do you feel like you faced and that you had to overcome to do this great mitzvah?
I'm giving away all my money, so that's always hard.
What kind of project are you going to do?
I'm raising money to build a school in a poor part of Uganda.
He decided that he would build a school.
An entire school?
Yeah, a 7-room schoolhouse.
And donate 100% of his money.
So Moses did exactly the same thing you're doing, Bo. He left his comfort zone to do something good for people that desperately needed it.
The village where Bo's project is going to be built is called Chikoiro. And the difference between a child going to school and not going to school is really the difference between life and death for many children.
It says, Bo, I've decided to put my money towards the school.
We've received money from over 500 people.
That's great. How old is she?
She's only 12. That's weird.
No, I think that's beautiful.
I know, that's awesome.
They were just ecstatic, and they really got that this was a child helping children.
How does it feel to be a philanthropist?
What's a philanthropist?
This has been a tremendous opportunity, not just for the children of Chikoiro, but for kids in the U.S. to get the idea that there's more that they can do.
There are some people that don't have the capacity to receive the good that wants to come into their life, and they end up becoming martyrs. They end up burning themselves out because they give, but they never replenish themselves through being available to the presence, expressing through them through receptivity.
The couples who proceed slowly in therapy, the couples who seem to never get there, and no matter what happens in the relationship, they just don't, quote, really improve, have what we call a defense against receiving. They have no receptors for letting stuff in, not only letting love in, but letting compliments in, letting positive statements in, letting appreciation in.
To surrender yourself enough to be able to receive, first from God, the Holy Spirit, and then from those around you, I think is one of the most sacred acts that we perform.
The complete whole state is an individual that gives with ease and with grace. They're here to give, to share their gifts, their time, their talents, their capacities, while at the same time they're in tune with the fundamental order of existence, their real being, and they're receptive to this flow through them. They can receive love, they can receive intuitive hits, they can receive wisdom and guidance, they can receive the beauty that is everywhere. So there's a complete cycle, and ultimately giving and receiving are one.
Most of us have heard prophets and sages and enlightened beings say that we're all one. But we look out at the world and we see separation everywhere, so how can that be true? Does that mean that I'm one with Jack the Ripper as well as Mother Teresa? Does that mean that I'm one with you? Are these just airy-fairy ideas, or could this be the next step in all of us realizing that we're actually an embodiment of God?
The fundamental principle that you find encoded in all major religions, all authentic spiritual paths, is this spiritual idea called oneness. That we are at one with life, we're at one with the presence of God, we're at one with each other.
We find that in all the traditions. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. One presence, one power. The Atman, the Buddha nature, the Christed one. It's in quantum physics. Rupert Sheldrake, the unified field, one presence everywhere.
This oftentimes doesn't seem to square with physical evidence, primarily because the average individual sees the world through the filter of a sense of separation. They see the world through their senses.
And if you're more in the ego, then you're going to sense survival fear, this angst that you've got to get yours, that it's all about getting.
Through spiritual practices, you go beyond the sensory realm and you enter into a field where you see, not with eyesight, but with insight, that everything is connected. The scientists, the quantum scientists would call it a unified field that is everywhere in its fullness, that is undivided.
That's what being awake means, is to say, well, I'm dancing in this illusion of separateness, but I'm not separate.
For once an individual is broken through, then all the things on the surface that seem separate begin to work together for our good, because we're now in tune with everything on the invisible level. So you end up working not harder, but you end up working a lot cleaner, a lot easier, because you're in tune with all of life. So you're not trying to make something happen on the surface, you're trying to make something welcome on the invisible side of life. So oneness is the primary principle. It's the linchpin of power. We're at one with God, one with love, one with life, one with all the power that there is.
Until we're willing to embrace the totality of our humanity and our divinity, we can never be in oneness, because we're taught to say, I'm not that. We're taught to say, you know, I see something I don't like, so I don't want to be that, and we push that part of ourselves aside.
And at times, all of us, including myself, at times find it hard to be at one with someone or someones that either don't agree with us or that have values that would be we believe to be totally destructive.
These days, I'm having a lot of trouble with phony people. And I can see that I don't like that part of myself, that I'm always searching for ways to be more authentic and more real and show more of myself, even as a teacher.
I finally went to take my first nap in 40 plus hours. I really don't know. It was kind of timeless there. And I found an apartment building that had been completely abandoned. And so I went into the lobby of this apartment building, and I found a couch, and I dusted it off, and I laid down on the couch with my face against the back of the couch, and I cuddled up, and I bundled up, and probably about a half hour into my sleepless nap, I could feel the little man, the first victim that we found, the little man in the suit. I could feel him kneeling behind me, and I could see it vividly. He was kneeling behind me, his disfigured face staring at the back of my head. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, and I was pretty terrified. And I just laid there for, I don't know how long it was, 5 or 10 minutes, just thinking, what is he doing? And I was still and quiet long enough for that voice, that voice, whatever you want to call it, my internal voice, that said to me very loud and clearly, this could be your Vietnam, or ... And it just left me kind of hanging like that. I didn't know what the ... was, but I knew what this could be your Vietnam meant. Having grown up, seeing all of the ex-vets with all of their drama that they've brought back from the war and their flashbacks, having just had my first Ground Zero flashback, I knew that this could be something that could stay with me that way for the rest of my life, and it could probably trouble my future. And I knew that the answer to the or was back out on the rebel. So I got up and I suited up again, and I put my mask on, and I walked around the building, and as I rounded the corner, they had put up a new work light, and it was this very bright, brilliant light. And everything just seemed so bright and so brilliant that I was like just struck. And I just looked around at all these people, and everything just instantly appeared different to me. And I stood there with tears in my eyes. It felt like the world was in slow motion. I was watching people go by, and all I could see was just spirits crossing and spirits working and chain gangs of spirits. And it was so clear to me that everything was interconnected, and it was all one big body of God. Everybody had dropped their egos, they had dropped their identities, they had dropped their rank, and they were working together for the greater good of all. And I was so lit up with possibility for humankind of what it can be like when we all are working together in this way. And I could really get beyond concept what oneness was. Knowing that the entire world was experiencing what it was experiencing, all the separation and fear and chaos that was going on in the world, here I was standing there experiencing the greatest bliss and beauty of my life. And I remember just wishing that the world could see this situation through my eyes.
When I first decided to be on this spiritual journey, I was really looking to become a better me. And my sister always told me that I was angry and I was selfish and self-absorbed and these whole list of characteristics that I didn't want to be. So I started working on becoming this nice person. And I learned how to talk in a nice voice. And I learned how to give things away that I had if you wanted them. I did all these things. And then I went to a seminar one day, and I'm standing there and everybody's looking at me. In the middle of the seminar, this woman shouts out, "You're a bitch." And I thought, well, I know that. How does she know? And she said to me, "Let me ask you something, Debbie. If you were remodeling a house and you were 6 weeks late and $20,000 over budget, do you think it might help to be a little bitchy?" And all of a sudden, a light went on, because I thought if I just got rid of all my bad qualities, and believe me, I have plenty, that somehow that would make me a good person. The piece I was missing is that every dark quality of mine came bearing gifts.
And you can go down the list. Things that we see that are very negative oftentimes have the effect of taking us to the next stage of our evolution. You take somebody like a George Bush, he was an evolutionary trigger. He's galvanized the peace movement, parts of the peace movement that had never spoken to each other in many years, since the 60s. He comes along with a war ethic and a preemptive strike war ethic. Peace movement starts talking. So he actually was a very positive force for the evolution of many positive things on the planet.
See, if I want to grow and evolve spiritually, I have to take my projection off of them and own and embrace that part of myself.
We have to be lovers of humanity. We have to be lovers of ourselves, and even seek to love that which our ego or our mental perception would say, you know what, I can't love that.
I'm a phony bitch. Now the question is, how am I going to love myself being a phony bitch?
Go within and embrace it anyway.
And even as I say this, they're probably going to bleep me out, because nobody can bear that they might be a phony bitch. So then they've got to shut me down, and we all have to pretend like we're not that. People get confused in this conversation because they'll say, well, I'm not a murderer, or I'm not a rapist. But I would say, find out what kind of person would be a murderer. What kind of person would be a rapist? Those are the questions that we must ask ourselves, because maybe a rapist would be somebody who's wounded or sick. We all have a wounded part of ourselves. We all have a sick part of ourselves. We all have a twisted part of ourselves. And even though we'd like to fit into the ego's ideal of being a perfect human being, we're not. We're all that there is. And when we can open our hearts and have compassion for the part of us that might murder, we have no idea that if we're capable of that, especially if we're living and watching this film. But maybe in the right or wrong circumstances, we are all capable of anything. The most beautiful, glorious act of greatness, and what we would consider one of the most horrible crimes against humanity. And when we embrace all of ourselves, knowing that we're both human and that we are divine, well, voila, all of a sudden you have a whole human being, and what you feel is oneness.
I was married to a woman who was in so many ways the embodiment of all the things we're talking about. Linda has always been such an inspiration for me, and I know for so many other people, because of her kindness and her beauty. When my daughter and I were in Minnesota with family,